Oh, so this is the format we're using now? I guess. As I've said in my video about Jedi Fork and Hodor, most of what we've been getting in the ways of Star Wars material has been alright. Serviceable. Something that does its job. Like a ham and cheese sandwich on white bread. Not especially noteworthy, but it gets the job done. For the general audience of Star Wars, that being children, this is fine. However, the thing is that Star Wars has had a lot of flavors over the years and everyone's developed their own tastes. There are the aging baby boomers who are pissed that the sandwiches these days aren't exactly how mom used to make. There are those who grew up with the prequels and the KOTOR games who have developed a taste for a little spice. Then there are the deep lore people who need every category of sandwich in their food cyclopedia regardless of whether any of them are any good. Now, I'm not here to say that any one group is justified in their dissatisfaction, it's mine, but regardless, the point is that there are those among the Star Wars fandom who are rather unsatisfied with just ham and cheese over and over again. I spent way too long on this food metaphor. My point is that with all the Star stuff we've gotten, the new games, the new TV shows, and new movies, the only thing that's interested me is the Onslaught expansion of the Old Republic. In this expansion, the war between the Republic and the Sith Empire is picking up speed again. Your character, the commander of the Eternal Alliance, has to choose which side to back in this conflict. Because the character you play starts off as either Republic or Empire, this means you can choose to be loyal to your original faction, or work as a double agent for the opposing side. It's like the Rebel Loyalist plotline from Battle of Azeroth, except it's actually a core part of the story and not just something the devs added as a limp-headed response to fan backlash. The story events give you the opportunity to do what is best for the Republic or Empire in the war effort, or to sabotage them and guarantee a win for the other side. Now you might be thinking, but Mikaila, you beautiful cunt! Why would I want to fight for the Empire for any other reason than to be an evil bastard? I'm one of those people who feel squeamish about being mean to people in video games. And to that I say, mood, but also don't worry, SWTOR's got you covered. Ever since the game came out, SWTOR has always given you the choice to play an Imperial character who can go, let's get the light side all up in the Empire shit. Like all up in there. Like all up in there. You can treat prisoners and servants with respect, punish other Imperials for their fascist bullshit, and welcome non-human races among the Empire's ranks. Hell, the Sith warrior can have a side story where they and their apprentice try to reshape the Empire through the light side. And it's not just your active decisions that add nuance to the conflict, the story does that too. In previous expansions, the big bad of the game comes in the form of the Eternal Empire, a faction led by bloodthirsty tyrants with nigh inexhaustible mechanical armies that cripple both factions within the course of 5 years. In the player's attempt to defeat this unstoppable force, the Republic offers you fuck all in terms of official support, a fact that stings even harder if your character starts off in the Republic. The first bit of support you get from either faction comes from the Empire. By that point, you learn that not only is the current Empress of the Sith, Darth Asina, working to reform the Empire into something more light-leaning, but as that's happening, the corrupt former Chancellor of the Republic tries to have you killed in order to seize control of the Alliance. So the game gives you incentive to abandon the Republic in favor of the Empire. You can even lampshade this in a galactic interview if you're a Republic character.
The Sith Empire helped us when the Republic wouldn't. The Supreme Chancellor actually tried to have me killed.
This is a setup that really plays to the strengths of BioWare, story events that force the player to carefully consider their moral choices. In SWTOR, you can choose your faction as well as choosing your dark light side alignment through moral dilemmas, and now with this expansion, you can choose whether or not to stay loyal to your original faction. Sure, the narrative follows a set path leaving you somewhat railroaded, but it's done so in a way where your character's choices still have weight to them. Is there anything like that in Jedi Fallen Order? Well, it tells us that the Galactic Empire is bad. Kind of a no-brainer there, but okay. But one of your companions did a bad thing one time, so now you don't know if you can trust them. Nuance! So yeah, Fork and Osis is more or less what I thought it was gonna be. A rehash of Rebels with the Dark Souls meets Naughty Dog gameplay we've been getting the past few years. It's also kinda like Rogue One, where it tries to have moral ambiguity amongst its cast despite the fact that the villains are actually very evil and need to be stopped. I don't know who keeps thinking black and gray morality was a good story idea, but it would be very nice of them to just stop having bad ideas. Like, seriously, the main character arc that Mr. Bland-ass white bread protagonist has is feeling like trying to do the good thing just keeps making bad shit happen, so he just decides to stop doing anything. Now, ordinarily this kind of theme would actually make me angry, but I understand the reason this game has that implicit lesson. These heroes can't do anything to help bring down the Empire, because they're not in the movies. Seriously, if this story took place in a different era, the characters might have actually been engaging and the story would have been more satisfying. Have a story about a Padawan who was disillusioned by the Jedi Order after the death of his master and the PTSD that followed, and another disillusioned Jedi needing his help recovering an important artifact away from the Sith before it can be used to destroy the Republic. You can have your twists and turns, you can explore what it's like to be force sensitive and also a trauma survivor, you can have your moral ambiguity, but most importantly, you can have an actually satisfying ending that's not, let's just not do anything. Like, this game's story has good ideas, but those ideas are throttled by the movies it's caught between, and as such, don't have satisfying endings. Near the end, after the final boss, there's a bit where your companion has a heart-to-heart with the Padawan she gave up to the Empire, and it has the makings of an emotionally gripping scene, and then, oh, hi, Annie. Fancy meeting you here. How's the what? Just like in Rogue One, Vader shows up at the last minute to remind us that, yes, this takes place before A New Hope, so what happens here ultimately doesn't matter. You know, in a series of movies where one is ultimately the chosen one, the friend of the chosen one, or cannon fodder, making stories about the cannon fodder being said cannon fodder isn't the key to shaking things up. That's the biggest problem with a lot of the Disney stuff these days, is that it's so restrictive. Like, none of the TV shows or games seem to take place outside the rough 100 years the 9 movies take place. So anything that isn't the 9 main movies can have a significant impact on the plot of those movies because they're all literally episodic and meant to stand on their own. Hell, the sequel trilogy itself seems to be bogged down by this in spite of them being part of the main movies because they spend a great deal of their time going, remember this from the old movies. Rise of Skywalker takes this problem up to 11 with the return of, oh, by the way, spoilers, with the return of Palpatine. It's like they couldn't trust Cylon Rose to be his own villain, or maybe some yo-yo on the team kept pushing for the undeserved redemption of his, and we already killed Snoke, so they was just like, bring back the guy who was chucked in a chasm and blew up. Brilliant! And let's make him Rey's grandfather. Genius! Doing the I am your father twist is even better the second time around. And let's give him a powerful fleet of warships that come from nowhere and have his true goal to be to possess Rey's butt. Wait, this sounds familiar. Then there's that weird Force dyad business, the fact that Palpy made Snoke, the Knights of Ren amounting to nothing, that shit with the dagger, and yeah, this is a problem with the new trilogy, lore dumps that aren't fully explored because we need time for other lore dumps. The only new thing that amounts to much in the story is the Force healing thing that, hey, wait a minute! There's a Jedi technique that can heal people? So much so that it can bring people back to life? Why the hell did no one teach this technique to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith? I feel like teaching him a light-sided technique to keep people he cared about from dying might have saved everyone a lot of trouble. You can't tell me that this isn't an ability the Jedi had at the height of their power. Leia taught this to Rey and she didn't even complete her training back in the day. Holy shit, this movie is so desperate to ignore the prequel's existence that they created a plot hole for another movie. I have no words. Actually, no, I can't even call it prequel erasure, because Hayden Christensen, Samuel L. Jackson, and Ewan McGregor are all in the movie. They're disembodied voices, yes, but they're still in the movie with new dialogue, and they keep talking about the Sith, which was not a word before the prequels. So it's like they keep dipping their toes in stuff from the prequels, but they're afraid of just diving right in, as if doing so would just give the audience Jar Jar flashbacks. Side note, Jar Jar did nothing wrong, and I'll slap anyone who disagrees. Like, for fuck's sake, there's a new Separatist union during the time of the new trilogy. Oh yeah, remember the Separatists from the Clone Wars? They're back. Well, not them specifically, because, you know, Anakin took care of that. But there's still a presence during the Resistance versus New Order story. Of course, you'd be forgiven for assuming otherwise, as the proof of their existence is solely in supplementary material that the movies do literally nothing with, because we can't acknowledge that the Clone Wars happened, even though everyone loved the Clone Wars, because what if they remembered Jar Jar? Oh, horror! They had an entire third faction to do something with for this trilogy, but decided to do fuck all with it. This is something that could have worked alongside the Canto Bight scene in The Last Jedi. Why is this trilogy just dripping with unused potential? This problem could have easily been avoided if they just made a series in a different era of the galaxy, which shouldn't have been hard because you have roughly 2,000 years of history to choose from. Of course, they're not gonna do that because, again, Disney isn't about anything that isn't a safe investment. Sure, we're supposedly getting a KOTOR movie at some point, but the odds of that movie covering anything that wasn't just the OT retread of the first game is pretty fucking slim because, as established, Bob Iger won't bother with it, despite having more than enough money that taking the risk wouldn't even put a dent in their income. Oh yeah, I probably should mention, Bob Iger is the current CEO of Disney at the time of this video. He has been all about safe investments that are guaranteed to succeed. You notice how so many of the MCU movies have been rather homogenous in tone with a lot of quipping and pro-US military imagery? Or how there are so many live-action remakes of classic Disney movies that are guaranteed to make money purely from exploiting nostalgia? Yeah, it's all the same basic principle. New Trilogy is just a Disney-fied version of the old trilogy because it's easy money. Best we can do is hope for a change in management before the next set of movies. And for fuck's sakes, when that happens, can we please get a halfway decent lightsaber fight in the next movie? I know everyone was like, the prequels lightsaber fights were over-choreographed and didn't have any tension. And even if there was any validity in that claim, the solution isn't to fucking pendulum swing into a fighting style that is literally just wide swings and heavy cleaves, like the damn sword made of light weighs 80 fucking pounds. The only thing in the Disney canon that is especially unique is The Mandalorian, but literally the only noteworthy thing in that show is Baby Yoda, and because he's non-verbal, all I have to do is look up GIFs of him online and get the same experience without membership costs. Then again, there's also Gina Carano as Cara Dune, who is just... oh, yes. Again, I'm not saying that any of this stuff is bad. It's all perfectly fine. It's just that if you're like me and like the more nuanced perspectives of KOTOR 2 and SWTOR, you shouldn't expect anything like that in the Disney canon without a change in management. Until we get someone who likes to take more risks than Iger, it's gonna be New Hope rehashes and inconsequential filler in between for you. I'm not saying that everything in Legends was good, in fact a lot of it was very disposable. It's just that when you get a series so scrubbed down and sterilized as Star Wars has become, a lot of the crazier shit starts to become more appealing. And I thank the dark side that the only Legends property that managed to stay alive is still really fucking good. You know what? Fuck it. Let's talk about Lana Beniko. Lana Beniko was one of the best, most nuanced characters SWTOR ever had. Like, holy shit, where do I even begin? She's one of the most subversive takes of a Sith character in quite a while. Whereas in other stories, the depth given to Sith characters was tragedy or general angst, here it's pragmatism. If there were a word to describe Lana, it's pragmatic. She doesn't see the value of blood purity or the constant infighting seen among her Sith colleagues, and doesn't flaunt her powers by killing or torturing underlings. She's very utilitarian in her approach to problems. That said, she's still very much Sith.
I so rarely get to menace innocent young Jedi anymore.
She'll often encourage the player to commit dark side actions and will be fully prepared to kill others for treason. And she loves being sinister. What's great about these two character traits is that they don't conflict with each other. Oftentimes, the dark side option she encourages the player to take is to just not try to save absolutely everyone, taking caution when allying with factions that are untrustworthy, which I know sounds like glass houses for Sith, but bear with me here, or just wanting to make sure that traitors see justice for their crimes. She's definitely ruthless, but never impractically so. Of course, this all just plays into what is perhaps the most interesting thing about Lana, her relationship with the Outlander. Well, okay, that too, but there's more to it. Whether the Outlander is absolutely macking on Lana or barely paying attention to her, Lana remains loyal regardless. Lana will voice her disapproval if the player chooses an action that she doesn't like, but she doesn't let it waver her loyalty and will follow her orders. Why? Because she respects the Outlander and trusts them to know what they're doing. The Outlander has proven to be perfectly capable of achieving the possible by the time of Knights of the Fallen Empire, so Lana has learned to respect her power and judgment. Even when the Outlander opposes her advice, Lana will always trust that she knows what she's doing and stand by her side. Now, this could be seen as a point of contention, as Lana not opposing the Outlander on anything and just going along with it primarily because she's a primary love interest could be seen as shallow writing. But it's notable for the fact that at the end of the day, Lana is still Sith. She subscribes to a philosophy that is all about personal freedom that encourages subterfuge and betrayal. Yet throughout every expansion she's featured in, almost every other NPC is at risk of betraying you, except Lana. Senya, Theron, Koth, Scorpio, each of these characters can or will betray you at some point in the story, but never Lana. She never sees any pragmatic value in betraying you. She stays loyal to you not only because she respects your power, but fighting alongside you makes her stronger.
It's hardly the Sith approach.
I've grown far stronger working beside her than I ever could have become through treachery.
Intriguing. I suppose the Sith code never specifically calls for the usurpation of the master by the apprentice.
Lana still does Sithy things like spy and deceive people, but you are always in on it. She never attempts to deceive or betray you. She deceives and betrays other people for you, which honestly is just the pinnacle of romance. This is the kind of nuance in characters like Lana. Someone who isn't above fighting dirty, but are also pragmatic and respecting of power, which tie together to form a powerful bond to the player that can be described as fiercely loyal, perhaps to a fault. Contrast this with Darth Ross, whose entire shtick is, I killed countless people, including my fellow Jedi, my own father, and several planets worth of helpless populaces, which is nothing to say about how I've attempted to kill, torture, and gaslight this one girl, but have you ever stopped to consider the fact that I am sad? So yeah, in case I haven't made this abundantly clear by this point, SWTOR is currently my favorite piece of Star Wars content, and while I'm glad that I have it, it does sadden me that most of what we've been getting besides that are just more versions of A New Hope, especially when this was a franchise that loved to go hog wild with different ideas back in the day. I'm sure this will change eventually, I just hope I'm not collecting social security checks before it does. On the day that finally does change, however, my hopes for the new movies include proper LGBT representation, a plot that's a little more involved than just plucky underdogs versus big bad fascists, and some actually good lightsaber fights. Everything else I'll try to remain flexible on. That said, if the next Jedi character isn't a lesbian, I won't even bother.